Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Ukraine is pushing back forcefully against Russian claims that it attempted to strike President Vladimir Putin's residence, an accusation Kyiv calls a dangerous fabrication designed to derail peace efforts. The claim surfaced as diplomacy intensifies and, as new reporting suggests, Russia's war losses are climbing sharply in 2025. Joining us is Olena Lennon, Adjunct Professor of National Security at the University of New Haven, to unpack what these allegations mean, how information warfare is shaping negotiations, and what the battlefield numbers reveal about the war's real trajectory. Professor Lennon, welcome back to TVP World. Thanks for taking the time.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me back.
Good afternoon. So let's start with this accusation by Moscow that Ukraine has launched 91 drones against one of Putin's residences. What do you make of that accusation?
Well, it's obvious that Putin is desperate not just to derail these peace talks and negotiations, but also to control the narrative. He's trying to change the story to shift everybody's attention toward Ukraine being the aggressor, and Ukraine not wanting peace. So part of it, as you said in your introduction, is information warfare that is parallel with kinetic activities on the battlefield. So I think it's pretty clear that Putin is threatened by the progress, even though it's minimal progress. But nonetheless, it's been these negotiations between Americans, Ukrainians, and Europeans have been at least a year in the making. And incrementally, progress has been achieved, even though we don't know all the details. But it's clear that Putin is threatened by continued conversations between Americans and Ukrainians, and he is desperate to derail peace talks and reinstate control of the narrative to shift attention toward offensive operations by Ukrainians, and that they're not negotiating in good faith.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, these are so blatant. These allegations are so blatantly manufactured that it shows the level of despair in Russia.
Right. Well. Okay. So you raise a couple of points there. Blatantly manufactured, certainly, and many European countries have said that is clearly not true. Otherwise, there would have been some evidence of this happening, and there isn't any. But it's, Putin's only going to derail the peace negotiations if he has Trump's ear, and that Trump believes that this is what Ukraine has done. Does Trump believe it?
Well, we don't know yet, and he said as much. And you're right. Putin does have Trump's ear, and the other way around. But at the same time, Trump was inconclusive in his statement when he first responded to these allegations by saying that he's not sure, what exactly happened, and it's clear that Trump is going to defer to his intelligence services, to U.S. intelligence community to confirm these allegations. So Trump has actually shown more skepticism toward these allegations than would meet the eye. So I wouldn't rush to conclusions when it comes to Trump being completely swayed by Putin. I think Trump takes Putin more seriously than most leaders, and it's clear that he does put a lot of more credibility into Putin's words than most political leaders. That said, he was hesitant to jump to conclusions and accuse Ukraine, and I think that's a positive sign.
Indeed, it is. Now, there is one other possibility, of course, that Putin releases this information or this disinformation at this time, and that is to justify some kind of retaliation which it had in mind. And it's just a way of saying, well, you did this, so we're gonna get back at you by doing whatever it is they have in mind. What do you think?
Well, absolutely, and he actually, said exactly that. They now have to change their negotiating position and their negotiating strategy in response to these alleged attacks on Putin's residence. And what that means, in plain language, is that Russia now feels even more justified to continue their aggression and advancing on the battlefield and taking more territories. And changing their negotiating position militarily, not diplomatically. And I think the timing is also important because of New Year's Eve in Russia. And it's a very important holiday, and it's a very important marker of progress. And Putin already said in his address that this is a just war and that the war will continue. And that their mission will be accomplished, and all is going well. So I think part of that narrative and part of the the change in the story is precisely aligned with New Year's address to mobilize the Russian nation and to justify further attacks toward Ukraine.
Okay, now you mentioned earlier that this disinformation campaign runs in parallel with the kinetic campaign, the war, the battlefield itself. Now, according to recently released BBC information, the rate of Russian deaths or casualties on the battlefield has increased sharply over the last few months. Is that making a difference to Russian progress?
Well, under difference to any other leader, this would make a difference, right? So at what cost do these incremental gains come to Russia? But they don't matter to Russia, to Putin, obviously. You're right. A lot of different reports pointed that even though the Russians have, in fact, taken more territory, more Ukrainian territory this year than they did in previous years, proportionally, yes, they have achieved some gains, but at what cost? The casualty rate has increased dramatically, so the Russians actually losing a lot more people and material to take more territory. But that cost analysis is not the same for Putin as it is for other rational leaders. That is not at all part of his decision-making calculus. The number of casualties don't seem to factor in Putin's decisions at all. Not only that, but on top of increased casualties, the Russian economy is doing much worse than it did since 2022. Its oil revenue has declined, and it's projected to continue to decline. Sanctions are beginning to bite more. And the economy is projected to potentially go into depression, but none of that seems to matter in terms of how Putin is adjusting his war aims in Ukraine. So again, a rational person looking at these variables would conclude that it's not worth it to continue these maximalist objectives. But, that's not how Putin seems to be making his decisions.
Well, he may not be making his decisions that way, but surely the Russian public must be feeling the economic pinch, the fact that so many people are not coming home from the war, or certainly not coming home alive and well. Is there growing resentment amongst the Russian population to this war as a result?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you're precisely right. The Russian people are the ones who are feeling the pressure and the cost of the war more so than political elites. But that's exactly the problem, that in Putin's regime, dictatorial regime, there is a fundamental disconnect between public discontent and political decisions, especially geopolitical decisions, foreign policy decisions. Russia is a dictatorship. Public opinion does not translate into changes in policy, and public opinion does not translate into pressure on political leadership. So the only response we have seen so far in public discontent is more propaganda, more warmongering, and more censorship, to where Putin only in response to the Russian public feeling the pain of the war. Putin only intensifies propaganda campaigns by basically promoting these narratives that it will be worse if that this is a war, an existential war, in which Russia is fighting, a military alliance where Ukraine is just a proxy and NATO military alliance. So basically his message is that this pain is necessary because Russia's survival is at stake. And unfortunately, the Russian public and the Russian opposition have no power in Russia to change anything.
Right. Well, that is of course true, and well known amongst many, and unfortunate, I must say. Now, I want to get your view on the peace process as it currently stands. I mean, Trump has constantly said he wants peace, and yet the only person that's not even prepared to discuss peace, unless their maximalist demands are met, is Putin. I mean, Zelensky has made certain compromises, but Putin is unwilling to do so. Why is President Trump not imposing more pressure on Putin to get to some negotiated peace deal?
Well, Trump fundamentally believes that he just wants to end the war. He doesn't care how exactly it ends. He just wants the fighting to stop on his watch, so he can take credit for it. And he believes that the easiest way to stop the fighting, to stop the war, is to put pressure on Ukraine, because Ukraine is a weaker party to conflict, and Ukraine is cooperative, and Ukraine is willing to make concessions, whereas Russia has shown time and again that they don't want peace, and they're not negotiating in good faith. So I think Trump, being a transactional negotiator, just looked at the easier way of forcing a ceasefire or a peace deal on two parties, and right now Ukraine is just a more willing participant, and Trump just wants to get it done. So I think he's being, quite transactional in this process, and doesn't quite understand the full picture of Russia's neo-imperial ambitions and long-term consequences for European and American security if Russia has its way in Ukraine. So unfortunately, I think that Trump is just being short-term oriented. And doesn't seem to understand the long-term consequences of Russia's win, whereas the Russians and the Ukrainians are playing the long game. He's there, existential survival is at stake. So yeah, I think that is fundamentally
Understood.
where the disconnect is.
So peace at any price, but unfortunately
Exactly.
the price is being paid by the Ukrainian people. Professor Lennon, thank you so much, as always, for sharing your analysis with our audience, and have a very, very happy New Year.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Bye now. And that brings us to the end of this World Talks. Don't go away, though, lots more coming up. Goodbye.